Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss The Hateful Eight, starring Samuel L. Motherfucking Jackson, Kurt Russell, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Walton Goggins, G.B.M.H, Tim Roth, Michael Madsen, and Bruce Dern, and directed by Quentin Tarantino. Now, before I get into this movie, I must say I did hear about those interviews about how he blamed not Star Wars, but Disney for not getting the big screens that it deserved in the Roadshow back at Christmas. And I did see this in the Roadshow when it came out in movie theaters. And then I went back and saw the digital projection when it was widely released in digital projection. What do I think of it? Let's get into it and let's find out. But I do like the only thing I'll say about this before I get started is I do like the Roadshow experience. Major Marquis Warren, played by Samuel Motherfucking Jackson, bumps into Obi carrying John the Hangman Ruth, played by Kurt Russell, and his prisoner Daisy Domergue, played in a terrific performance by Jennifer Jason Leigh in a wagon. And I'm liking these characters so far, and as we're introduced to them, and Mr. Tarantino does a damn good job for making me care at the same time as being entertained. I also like the fact that Major Marquis has a letter from Abraham Lincoln, aka the 16th President of the United States of America. But the music did feel a little out of place, but luckily the movie doesn't have too much songs. Major Marquis shows John the Lincoln letter, and Daisy spits on it, and Major Marquis slaps her, and John's wrist is stuck on Daisy's wrist and almost breaks John's arm. And I found Kurt Russell as well as Samuel Motherfucking Jackson to be great in this movie. Another character I found great was Sheriff Chris Mannix, played by Walton Goggins, who was outstanding in this movie. And he became a good character actor I like, even in movies like and he was in last week's movie of Tarantino's. And I found him great in this movie once again, as they enter a cabin owned by Minnie Mink, and the actress who plays Minnie was, when we see her later in the movie, was again in Django. And we don't know what happened to Minnie until later in the movie, which will be a great explanation, but I'll get there when I get there. We get inside the cabin, introduced to Bob, played by G.B.M.H, Oswaldo Mowbray, played by Tim Roth, Joe Gage, played by Michael Madsen, and General Sandy Don't Give a Damn Smithers, played by Bruce Dern, who I really liked in this movie. And I like the other characters in the cabin. I also like them interacting with John, Obi, Major Marquis, and Chris, and they act well, and Mr. Tarantino directs these actors very well. Major Marquis and General Smithers have some harsh words, and the dialogue isn't as golden here as is in Django and this other movie of Tarantino's. But what's interesting is Mr. Tarantino's dialogue is using the N-word either in the South or today's world, which is kind of offensive in a way, but one half is it happened and one half is on the mean streets of Los Angeles. But I do like the script in here. Everyone in the cabin have stew, and they talk shit about Major Marquis and his Lincoln letter, starting Chris wanting to see it and tormenting him, and Major Marquis decides to sit with General Smithers. And Major Marquis tells the story of how he left General Smithers' son in the cold while he was naked to suck on Major Marquis's big Johnson, meaning dick otherwise. And that monologue Samuel Motherfucking Jackson says to General Smithers was just so fucking intense. And he never gave him a blanket, and the way he said, "He sucked my big black Johnson right down his goddamn throat," was just really fucking gripping, on the edge of my seat. And if you went to the Roadshow in theaters, that was when the 15-minute intermission began. Perfect timing to go to the bathroom to either go to the bathroom or get snacks and talk about that moment of the movie. Mr. Tarantino narrates the story of Daisy Dummerger, who's got a secret and sees someone poison the coffee, and she plays the guitar, which was a beautiful singing voice of Jennifer Jason Leigh. And John drinks the coffee that's poisoned, and as he puts the handcuffs on her, and John vomits blood as he puts on the coffee cuffs and dies after he got them on her, and she's stuck on his arm. And Obi dies as well, and what the fuck did Obi do to her? Major Marquis takes John's gun away from Daisy and gets everyone on the wall and tells Chris because he was with them as they arrived in the cabin, and someone from the underground shoots Major Marquis in the ball sack. Which, oh my god, that's gotta fucking hurt. And it was an interesting idea to show Mr. Tarantino violence at best. Jodie Demingray, played by Channing Tatum, arrives at the cabin hours before Daisy, John, Chris, and Major Marquis on that morning and get introduced to Minnie Mink, whom I brought up earlier at Six Horse Judy, played briefly by Zoe Bell, who is with Jodie, Bob, Joe, and Gage, and Oswaldo Mowbray. And I enjoyed Channing Tatum's charisma in other movies like and I've reviewed him a couple of times in movies, for example, one where he was Superman and one where he was a cowboy, and I'll name them now. And I like the way all that is revealed versus how General Smithers got involved in the first place. Good way to tell the beginning of the plot, despite it wasn't in the opening otherwise, and it would have given out the entire mystery throughout the movie. But Minnie does get shot, and so does Zoe Bell and some other people, except for the people that arrived at the cabin. While wounded, Major Marquis is on the bed while Chris points the gun at Jodie, who's underground, and asking him to come out of there, and he does, and looks at Daisy, and who ends up being siblings, which I found hard to believe. And Major Marquis shoots his motherfucking brains out, and Daisy tries to make a deal with Chris about shooting Major Marquis dead, and decides not to take it, and shoots Oswaldo and Joe Gage's motherfucking asses down. And Chris faints for a couple of minutes until Daisy grabs a gun, and Major Marquis runs out of bullets, and Chris shoots her, and both he and Major Marquis hangs Daisy, like John Ruth would do, and Chris and Major Marquis read the Lincoln letter, and that as a climax was very intense and very nerve-wracking, on the edge of your seat kind of way, and I enjoyed that. Now it's time for the rating. I'll give this movie a 8.1 out of 10. Not the best movie Mr. Tarantino has made, but it was still very good. The plot was fantastic and not gold, and the performances were absolutely tremendous, and I like being around these characters. And hey, I really enjoyed the roadshow when I went and saw that back at Christmas time. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next week I will be back with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and the final movie on Mr. Tarantino until we get to his 10th and final film, which will not be for another few years. But until next time, and action.